My name is Richard Morellis, and I want to welcome you to the Prison Post. This is your podcast for conversations surrounding the need to reform prisons from the perspective of formerly incarcerated people, community members, and leaders in the restorative justice movement. The Prison Post will feature an episode every Wednesday with people who are in the fight to restore lives and heal communities. That's what's up. It's good to be back. Welcome to the Prison Post. I'm Richard Morellis. This is Jason Bryant.
Hello, everyone.
Good to have you, Jay.
Good to be here.
Back from Colorado.
Yeah.
Today we want to welcome our brother and our friend, Richie Reseda. What up, what up?
Hey.
I'll say a few things about him. He's the co-founder of Initiate Justice, the co-founder of Success Stories, the co-founder of Question Culture. Man, what else are you the co-founder of?
I think that's it.
Okay, well, you're young, so probably about 10 more in about 10 years. But we're excited to have you on the show today. Richard is a forward thinker. He's a visionary, an advocate, an activist, an organizer, philosopher, rapper, singer, musician, entrepreneur, and what else did I miss, Jay?
On and on and on and on. You didn't miss much, but what about sports? We were talking sports earlier.
Oh man!
So hold on. So look, I just want to say this. What are you shaking your head for? Hold on. We had as former guests, we had James Willock and
Christopher Good and Slick. You remember Slick?
We were talking about some of their claim to sports prowess. What about you, Rich? Because you can't tell by looking. You're sitting down right now.
What is he, about 6'4"?
You're pretty. No, he's like 6'9".
I'm 6'4". Really. I can't play a single sport.
My man.
I make up for sports with co-founding organizations. Apparently,
that part. That's beautiful.
Hold up though. Right before we got on the air, this guy was eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. It's been 20 months for me. I haven't even had one yet. What's up with that?
He said
all
no jelly.
Peanut butter.
Oh, okay, all peanut butter.
Just with the one piece of bread, the spoon of peanut butter, and just like I'm walking down a tear. It's an unfortunate habit, but I just haven't gotten the way that people eat, not in prison. I haven't figured that part out.
Right.
Well, you got some milk to wash it down?
I'm lactose intolerant. I did not drink a sip of milk the entire 7 years I was in prison.
Oh, really?
Couldn't do it. I would just drink water out the sink. And best believe I got me some water out the sink.
Oh, okay. Well, nowadays they have that milk that's not really milk, the coconut almond stuff.
Oh, yeah, the almond milk.
I drink that all day.
That's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to say, it's just so good to have this space with you and be able to hold this conversation with you. I remember I was thinking back to some of the work we did inside together, our early work with Hartnell Community College, doing leadership for life and talking to some of the college students about, different perspectives that we found useful in our lives. And one of the things that really stuck out to me was some of the music that you and 88 would grace us with. What was one of your favorite songs? One of your favorite songs that you two performed for, us while we were in that space?
I think one of my favorite, we obviously did a bunch of original music, 88 song, Overwhelmed, The Most Hunted. But my favorite music moment from when we were in Soledad together was when me and 88 covered Someone Like You by Adele.
Okay.
I don't know if y'all were at that talent show. It was like a Christmas show, and he slayed it. And it was when he first got to the yard. No one really knew who he was.
Right.
And people were like, "What are you doing this year?" Because the year before that, I had like rapped and done my own thing. And I was like, "Man, I'm about to accompany on piano this dude who just hit the yard named 88 who can sing." And they're like, "What?" Remember, Ted was like, "That's one of my favorite songs. Y'all better do a good job." And then Ted came up and was like, "Y'all did it justice."
Yeah.
That boy, dang.
Yeah, that's right. I thought you were gonna say, remember that song, Some Kind of Way?
Some kind of way.
Some kind of way.
Some kind of way. I don't know the words, but I remember some kind of way.
Some kind of way. My man.
Come on, man. We don't want to embarrass you too much, but give us a bar or two or something. All right, Rich. It's good to see you, man.
It's great to see you. I love y'all so much. I just love y'all so much. I'm so happy to be on with y'all.
You look great. It's good to see you smiling. And we I don't know how many years we were together there. I think you did 7, but at least it seems like 3 or 4 or 5 years or something together. I remember walking the track with you. I mean, in our book, you were generous enough to share in chapter 7 your story, and it's an amazing story. It's a great story. I remember also when you and Charles, how old were you at the time? And you and Charles were starting Success Stories. And I remember you asking me to come in on a Saturday in the cold cafeteria for 18 to 35-year-olds, this new group that was trying to get marginal. They were trying to marginalize you. And we were doing life management and time management and the smart goal setting system. And there was about 15, 20 of us in the cold gym on a Saturday morning. Remember that?
I remember it very clearly. Yeah, I was 21 years old. I was 21 when I met y'all and y'all first started kind of supporting me and Charles and how to build that program. And now I'm 29. I just turned 29 last week.
Oh, happy birthday. Happy belated birthday, bro.
Thank you.
Will you share with us a little bit about Success Stories? And, we're familiar, but for our listening and viewing audience, a little bit about its origin and what Success Stories is doing today?
Yeah, I'd like to talk a little bit about it. As far as I know, y'all got some Success Stories folks coming on the show doing a whole episode on Success Stories, which I'm really excited about. So I'll just give a little bit and I'll let those guys really do their thing. But Success Stories, we started back in 2014. When I first got to Soledad, it was the first prison I went to that had groups and like self-help culture. And the groups that I was being pulled into wasn't addressing patriarchy, which was so central to the harmful decisions that I was making and many of the harmful decisions of people I knew. Like the idea of what made me a real man was to be violent or to be emotionless or to have money or quote unquote have women. Like that idea was at the core of so much of my harmful behavior. And it just wasn't addressed, at least in the first few programs that I went through. So we started a group to address it.
Yeah, I think your program's still one of the only ones addressing it. We stepped in there as well after we read Joe Ehrmann's book, Season of Life, and saw some of his videos and his books on I know there's a great YouTube video out here called Be a Man by Joe Ehrmann, and he just pushes back against all of that. And appreciate the work you guys are doing. Yeah, we're going to be having Manny Thomas on. And Hugo Gonzalez, the master storyteller. They're both great communicators, great speakers. And what's your role today with Success Stories? And are you transitioning out? I want to talk about question culture, and the future for Richie Reseda. But what's going on there today?
Yeah, Success Stories since getting out, we've grown from 1 prison to 11, and a county jail and more reentry facilities and youth programs than I could count. And right now I'm the co-executive director. I oversee like the programming. And we have another co-executive director named Chantal who volunteered with us the entire time from the beginning, completely free, being our voice on the other side of the phone for 7 years or however long it was. And she manages like the operations and the more like nonprofit compliance, payroll, right? So yeah, that's been my role. I'm also the board chair of Success Stories, and we're getting ready to move Manny, who facilitated with us inside and now is running our growth operation here on the outside, getting us into new spots. He's moving into my space as co-executive director, and I'll remain the chair of the board.
Okay. That's beautiful. Manny's just been out a little over a year now.
Yep. Got out October 6th, I think, 2019.
That's awesome.
New dad.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
New dad.
Yeah. He definitely experienced the Freedom 20.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, there's the combination.
The best of us.
There's a combination. You got the Freedom 20 and then you got the COVID-19. So you got about 39 pounds that you're gaining coming out of prison.
How did you avoid that, Rich?
I mean, I think that
peanut butter, that's what it was.
I think that we connect weight to health in a way that I think has a lot more to do with patriarchy than it has to do with people's health. And for me, so I try not to pay that much attention to my weight. I wish I could tell you that I don't like look at like little areas of my body and be like, I want this to be this, or I want this to be this. I do absolutely do those things. But I think for me, like working out was the first part. That was the first discipline thing I ever did. Like when I got to prison, I was a drug addict. I was a gangbanger. I was used to waking up and just whatever. Like you wake up and the day is going to tell you what the day is doing. I didn't have like I do this every day type of thing.
Sure.
And the first thing that I learned to do that gave my day structure when I got locked up when I was 19 was I'm going to work out every day. And that felt important to me. And then it was, I'm going to learn 5 Spanish words a day. And then it was, I'm going to read part of my book. Then it became school. Then it became groups. Then it became and coming up behind y'all, taking 6, 7 classes at a time in college. And then I started doing that madness with y'all. And but that piece of discipline of like, I'm going to exercise every day, like became like almost a spiritual practice for me. Like it just became Mando. And that.
Did you maintain it since you've been out?
I have all the way up until COVID-19. That made it so hard. When the gyms shut down, I was like, I don't need a gym. I'll go to the park and do pull-ups. Park shut down, and working out in my house felt like working out in the cell. Like it didn't feel good to me. Like it reminded me too much of lockdowns. And so my workouts got real shifty, and it's been challenging. I haven't gotten back to my 5 times a week since the beginning of the pandemic.
Right.
Rich, right now you were talking about taking 5 or 6 classes and the way you build multiple disciplines one upon another since the age of 19. Would you take us back and share a little bit, without going into the great amount of details, but how you ended up incarcerated, and then that poignant moment where you decided to say, this is the point where I'm going to transform my life. This is the point where you said I went to prison as a drug addict, as a gang member. What happened with that shift? And then, of course, me and you talking about the story when you had to talk with the fellas, because I want to, when you went to the table and talked to the fellas that you talked about in this book, that story. And the reason why it's important is because our podcast is for those family members and loved ones of the incarcerated. And so many times we get comments on YouTube or through emails of, my loved one is saying, that it's not possible in there to transform their life, that you have to go along because that's the way it is. You have to go along with the way it is. And so I just want to hear a little bit about that and let the audience know.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Are y'all still on?
Yeah, we're here.
Yeah, we're here.
Okay. The view just changed. Can we put it back? It's weird to just look at myself. Thank you.
It's all good.
It's all right.
Yeah. So I'll be brief. I grew up in Los Angeles. I grew up in a culture and I don't mean specifically, like I grew up in what I think is the culture of America, which teaches young masculine kids that we need to be emotionless and violent and have money. And I think specifically for young Black kids, it looked a very particular way. The stereotypes we see in the media, not just about what makes you a real man, but what makes you a real Black man. And I bought into those things. I also grew up during the time of zero tolerance, where the county of LA decided if you heavily criminalize children, that's how you stop them from growing up to be quote unquote criminals in the future. So, but those were just a bad mix. I first was arrested when I was 11 for playing too rough at school. And again, 13 for leaving school early, and on and on and on. I also simultaneously, I started doing drugs when I was 12, gangbanging when I was 12, and selling drugs when I was 13. And that was really the trajectory my life was on. And even though I got brought into a great program started by my mentors, Patrice Cullors and Mark Anthony Johnson, training us as community organizers when I was 14, I still felt like I had to be that real one for my homies in the streets. So when my principal told me to drop out of high school when I was 16, I did. And my dad kicked me out the house, and I lived in the streets full time. And 2.5 years later, at 19, I decided to rob 3 Rite Aids. And I was charged with 7 robberies, 2 kidnappings, assault with a deadly weapon. I was facing 150 years to life. I fought my case for a year and eventually got 10 years and 2 strikes and got incarcerated. I entered prison, like I said, as someone who was addicted to drugs from the time I was 12 years old. I entered prison as someone who was gangbanging. And I knew that wasn't authentically who I wanted to be. Like, I knew that I was like playing a role based on what I felt like society expected of me. And like in my heart, I'm actually much more like the type of person who wears pink shirts, but I didn't feel like I could be that person. And I remember thinking to myself when I went to prison, by the time I got to state prison from LA County Jail, I was 20 years old. I had 10 years and 2 strikes, and I didn't know what it was going to be like to be in prison, but I imagined it would be violent. At my sentencing, the DA went and stood by my family and said, "We just want you to know if you ever commit another crime, this is pre-Prop 36. You'll be spending the rest of your life in prison. So I'm like, how am I about to go to prison and not be involved in any violence or anything illegal and lose my life? So I was like, I can't, me being a gang member is making that worse. Like it's just, so I didn't want to do that, but obviously I was too afraid not to. And after being in prison for about 3 years, I remember two of my homies, I say homies, y'all know what I mean. Like two people who are from the same card, like group of gangs that I was from, were about to jump this teacher in the education building. And anyway, the cops came and broke it up and and it didn't happen. And I remember talking to one of them. He was also 21 at the time and had 2 strikes. And he was like, yeah, we were going to jump this teacher, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, bro, what are you doing? You got 2 strikes. Like, you jump a teacher, it's a wrap. And he was like, so? He was like, so what? Like, I'll die for this shit. If they came in right now and said, who would die for your gang, I would get on my knees and shoot me in the forehead. And he got on his knees, put on this whole performance in the hallway in education. And I remember thinking and telling him, like, not me. Like that's not going to be my story. Like, I'm not going to die for something pointless. And he went and told my homies, like, yo, Richie said that if we jump this teacher, he's not going to help us. And then a couple of my homies started acting weird towards me. Like, and I remember thinking, this is so ridiculous. Like, y'all are supposed to be my friends, but you're mad at me. I wouldn't throw away my life for no reason.
That part.
I'm just not going to do this anymore. I just can't do this anymore. I would rather get the 3rd strike for fighting y'all because you jumped me because I'm not doing this anymore than get a 3rd strike for jumping some teacher for no good reason. So that's what I told them. I told them, yo, I'm not doing this anymore. It was one of the things I've ever in my life because of my, not just because of the fear of violence, but mostly my own identity. Like, I was so wrapped up. Like, if I'm not a gangster Crip, then who am I? What am I? Like, that was how I saw myself for, at that point, over 10 years, 12 years of my life. Like, half my life I had spent being a Crip. I didn't know who else to be. I didn't know where to sit.
How did they receive you taking that stand for your life, Rich?
They were just shocked. I remember I walked over to our area. As y'all know, like, everybody got their own little areas on a yard. And I told them, I said, I'm done, y'all. And they were like, what? What do you mean? I was like, gangbanging. I'm just done. And one of them, I remember, his name is Poppy. Unfortunately, he got killed when he got out. He's no longer alive. Poppy looked up to me and he was like, damn, cuz I ain't never seen nobody do that before. He was like, I've heard of people doing it but I've never actually seen it with my own eyes. And I was like, yeah, well, it's a wrap. And they were all just kind of quiet and didn't say anything. And it was yard recall. And I went in the building. And then that night I came back out for night yard. And, I expected they were going to come jump me or whatever. And here comes like all my homies, the young ones anyway, probably 6, 7 deep. And they like waved me over to spin a lap. And kind of the de facto leader, because, it's not organized like that. We're walking together and I got my jaw tight because I just know he's going to try to just knock me out and then they're going to jump me. And he put out his hand and he was like, bro, I respect you as a man. And I shook his hand and we rapped a couple verses back and forth. And that was that. I mean, there's little things that happened after that, little comments people would make. I remember getting in line for the Crip phones and somebody being like, we letting non-affiliates use the phones now, cuz? Like, kind of to nobody. Like, it was just me and him there, and he was kind of trying to preempt me, like provoke me to like get violent with him. But once I'm out, I'm out, y'all. Like, this is a game that we're playing, and this is not for me to be judgmental towards gang members. Like I said, our society trains us to be like this. Like our society trains us that this is what makes us valuable as men, right? Being violent and having money, and gangs are just the way that poor and working class men of color are able to achieve that. We don't have a dad to give us $1 million loan like Donald Trump, right? So it's no judgment towards them, but I'm gonna name the facts that shit is not beneficial to our lives and wasn't beneficial to my life. And I was willing to accept the consequences for choosing me and choosing my family.
Don't you think it's true that probably the majority of them, they wanted to do the same thing that you did? They wanted to come and say the same thing. It's in them. When you lay in your bunk at night and you think about your life, the majority of guys who are still gangbanging are like, man, when is this going to be over? They know deep down that it's a lie. And when Rich, speak to the point when, for all of us and the people that we know who have transformed their lives, there comes that moment. You mentioned the word fear, whether it's real or perceived. There's that moment when you come up against how it is, and you take your stand and you say what you say, and come what may. Like if they're going to jump me, I'm ready, but I'm not going to bow down. I'm not going to go backwards. What is that like? And is that still possible?
Yeah. I mean, advice that sticks with me, a good friend of ours, I'm sure y'all have him on the show eventually, Chris Bachnick. He said, what do you want to go to the dirt? You keep gangbanging, you're going to go to the dirt eventually. If you choose not to gangbang, you're probably going to go to the dirt for that. What do you want to go to the dirt for? What can you look in the mirror? What can you look to God and be like, I threw it all away for? And that is what got me past the fear, because the fear was real. Like, as gang members, I feel like so much of our self-worth is tied up in what our homies think of us. Mm-hmm. Like, it's such a core part of it is like, I was just thinking about this the other day, like, your homies are your resources, your homies are your housing, your homies are your everything. Like, so the idea that they would look at you some type of way is just unacceptable. I had so much fear. It wasn't the jumping part was like, yeah, that'll suck, but I'll be fine. But the idea that I had homies on the streets, homies that I gangbang with that were in other prisons that would be looking at me as like less than, that is what scared me. Right. But
that
I just
fear of being
that question.
That fear of disapproval, right? Of not being approved by. Yeah, it's crazy. And what's interesting to me, what I find to be interesting, is that like that need to, or that desire, not a need, but a desire to like be approved. Do you find that it has changed in some ways? Do you still seek approval in some ways, but just from a different category of people, or people who have different commitments?
A little bit. I think at first that was much more true for me, but the more and more I've grown, the more I've had to learn. And I'm talking about recent growth, y'all. Like this morning, like the more I've had to learn, like this person isn't God. I don't know how spiritual I can get on the show, but this person,
there you go.
I would get people and God mixed up. Like, if this person is saying I'm wrong, then I must be wrong objectively. No, like, this person isn't God. Like, they can have their opinion. It's based on their lived experience and where they're at. And that was so even in the social justice movement, like the opinions of these, they're not God. Like, I have to look at what I understand to be objectively true, and lies in with my values. But I appreciate you asking that question, Jay, because that experience is unique to gang members. I feel the same way when I would see how the cops would act. Like, cops would see something that they know is wrong. Like, even when we see these videos of extreme cop violence, you can look around in some of the surrounding cops' eyes, and I know that face of like, this ain't right. But I'm not going to say nothing about it. And I'm scrambling to try to justify my actions to myself right now, because I'm so afraid of going against the group. And that leads to a lot of the harm that we see from law enforcement and in the community as well.
So you're kind of leading right into like the next kind of topic that we want to talk about is some of these like hot button issues that are going on in the community today.
Yeah, for sure.
We're talking about like defunding the police. We're talking about prison abolitionism. What would you be willing to share with us, like the distinction between prison abolitionism and the value of rehabilitation? And like, what's your position on this?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. I think the idea of rehabilitation is bullshit. I think it's an extremely racist idea. I think it's a racist and classist idea because it applies that only certain people, like when we say rehabilitation, we mean very specifically people in prison need to change their lives and become good people again. But people in prison aren't the only people who do things that are harmful. There's a difference to, like, not all crime is harmful and not all harm is criminalized. So by that, I mean this. We know for a fact Donald Trump, president of the United States, killed somebody about 9 months ago, blew up a caravan in Iran. We know that for a fact. He said it with his mouth. The whole world knows. No one's asking that man to be rehabilitated. Right. No one's asking that man to put out some relapse prevention plan, and how are you going to make sure this never happens, and go to 20 years of groups and show me that you're this guru that can talk about spirituality and your inner thoughts. Nobody is asking that of him, mostly because of his wealth privilege, his racial privilege, the official power that's been given to him by the state. But
Sure.
what he's done is very similar to what most of our friends have done. He has taken a life, at least one, right? And he's a bad example because he's taken hundreds of thousands of lives. But so that's why the whole idea of like, we want to get away from punishment and towards rehabilitation is still rooted in the same racist, classist trope that there are broken people and fixed people, and it just so happens to be all the broken people look like us. I don't believe that, but I do believe in transformation, and I do believe in healing. That the difference is I think everybody needs that. And we all have caused harm. It might be everybody ain't robbed a bunch of stores like me, and I'm not trying to conflate somebody who cheats on their wife to somebody who robbed some stores and put a gun in someone's face. Not the same. But the fact is we both committed harm, and we both need to transform harmful behavior and heal. And that's the conversation I'd rather have than this idea of rehabilitation, which only applies to people who look a certain way and come from certain backgrounds. What's
your perspective on justice? What does justice mean to you?
Yeah, I think justice is... You're asking me specifically, what does justice mean to me? So I'll answer that. And then I remember your prison abolition question too, and I'd like to speak to that. Justice is healing. That is the most just we can get out of a bad situation. The best we can hope for is healing and restoration and transformation and accountability, right? So what do I mean when I say those things? Healing meaning if I harmed you, it's already happened. We can't undo that. So the best thing we can do is try to heal you to the point where you feel the least impact of that harm. Maybe that means I pay you back what I took. Maybe that means whatever, like however we get you to be the best you can be after the harm. That's justice. Accountability, me understanding so deeply what I did, the harm I committed. I understand it so deeply that I am committed to never doing that again. And I'm committed to making sure it doesn't happen again, period, right? I think that you all are great examples of this. You didn't just get out of prison and say, well, never going to try to kill anybody again. You got out and not only changed your behavior, but also are creating things like this show and all the great work that Crop is doing so that nobody does those things. That's how tapped in you are with the harm that you created. That's accountability, right? Transformation of behavior is a part of justice. If I understand what I did, I really am accountable for that, then I'm going to do the work that I need to make sure I don't do that anymore. Those things are justice. What we have right now is this idea that revenge is justice, that if I hurt you, you have to hurt me back. Right. Now we have two hurt people. What is just about that?
Right. You hurt me, so therefore I must punish you, or I'm entitled to punish you and give you pain, the pain that you caused me, sure. So tell us a little bit about this abolition and prison abolition and what you mean.
Because I want to preface it by saying this, Rich. I've been in so many circles where, just with family members, people in the community, and they believe that there's a pushback against it initially because it abolished, just close all the doors today. And I rarely hear people, with the prison abolitionists, they're defining what they mean and spending the time. So I think on the one hand, there's a responsibility to spend some time sharing. Here's what I mean. Here's a plan that I would. So it's just not some utopian idea, And then on the other hand, it's also their responsibility to start asking questions instead of staying in their unquestioned assumptions and making judgments about what the other side believes, and banging on them for that. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, I agree. Prison abolition, I think at its heart is really about revenge abolition. Prison abolition is about building the type of justice that we were just talking about, where justice is based in healing and accountability and transformation, instead of justice being based in revenge and profit as it currently is. So prison abolition doesn't mean that we don't have systems that respond to harm. It means that we have systems that respond to harm by trying to bring healing and transformation and accountability, as opposed to systems that respond to harm by causing more harm. The difference, right now, the way our justice system works is I will use myself as an example. I robbed stores. Here's what didn't happen. we didn't see any therapy or healing attempts made to the people who are in those stores, the people who we robbed to rob a store. Because you can't rob a store, you rob a person, right? It's a person. Sure. There's no attempt made on behalf of our system to heal that person, who I'm sure were greatly traumatized by my harmful actions. There was no attempt to even pay the store back. We have to pay that restitution, right? It took me 9 years to pay those people back, right? Sure. There was no attempt to find out why my little 19-year-old behind was running out there with guns, robbing people in the first place, and how to stop that from happening. The idea wasn't that this person's behavior can change. There was definitely no attempt made to reconcile me and the people who I harmed. In fact, when I wrote to them and apologized, I got a letter from DA Jackie Lacey saying if I ever do that again, she's going to charge me the crime.
Right.
So,
but there was a boatload of money spent to incarcerate you.
Correct. Instead, what happened was LAPD beat me into a concussion. So I was throwing up on myself, tried to take me away from the community for 150 years, and then spent $80,000 a year locking me up and treating me as less than human. That is what we are seeking to abolish. That nonsensical idea. All of those people who I harmed, if they've had any healing, it's not because our system offered it to them.
Sure.
It's because they went and they had to get it from themselves. And instead, our system sought to just destroy me. That's the idea that we're seeking to abolish. It doesn't mean that people will never be separated from those they harm. But there's all kinds of ways to achieve that when it's necessary. When it's necessary, there's all kinds of ways to achieve that, but not with arbitrary numbers. Some legislature made up that these crimes carry this amount of time, and then some DA put together a puzzle of what crimes they're going to charge me with, and then some judge slams a gavel. All these made up numbers, it's all completely arbitrary, baseless, and is not rooted in any solution. That's what we're seeking to abolish.
Rich, go ahead.
So just a few days ago, Ted and I had the good fortune of attending a fundraising event for, the Mr. Garcon running for a DA of LA. And he said a lot of the things that you're saying right now, which I think are powerful. They're true. And he basically said, when it comes to people who are arguing about, like, don't defund the police, like, where were you when we were defunding the schools? Where were you when we were defunding, the hospitals? Because all that happened and you had nothing to say. And, when it comes to like the people who actually do cause harm, we know how to deal with them. Unfortunately, he was saying it as a reality. Like, we have systems that are built on punishment. So if someone is really committed to causing harm, we can put them somewhere else. But as you were saying, there's so much money that's being spent to incarcerate people that could be used in a more effective way into communities, investing into communities, and making sure that these crimes don't happen in the first place because there's preventative measures being taken. There's investments in the community.
And you're talking about George Gascon, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Ideally, hopefully the future DA of Los Angeles.
I imagine he will be.
Yeah.
Hey, Rich, go ahead.
I was just going to say I appreciate those points. I appreciate those points. That I think people forget that there was a whole movement to fund the police. It's not that old. It was in the 1990s. So if you were alive before 1994, you're pretty familiar with what the world looked like prior to when we spent 1% of GDP on cops. Every a penny out of every dollar spent in this country goes to the police. Like, that was not always the case, and it's not serving us for that to be the case.
Let's
I want to say something about that too. It was a time in the 80s where what one would get 25 to life or 40 to life for would get 5 to life for. And who voted for those laws? The people. And the people in turn were convinced and persuaded to change those sentences to mandatory minimums of 25 to life. And if it was changed there by the people, they could also change again. The other day I was in a work group with the BSCC and those in charge of rewriting and changing the Title 15 for all the county jails in California. And I was only formerly incarcerated person there. And we're going over point by point, line by line, the Title 15 in there. And the point I want to share with you, Rich, is connected to this, is that we're going over like the 15 different ways to give discipline to a person who's acting out in there, getting in trouble, getting 115s, getting in trouble, right? And there's 15 different ways, and all of them is like, take away this, take away phones, take away day room, and all the way down to we had a vote on whether to remove the dietary discipline program of some type of loaf that they have in county jails. If you're really continuing to mess up, they give you this dietary loaf to eat. And we voted to have that removed. But my point is that there were 14 things on there after that on what to do to change that behavior. And what I shared with them is I said, you could lock me in the cell. You could take away my phone calls. You could take away my visits. You can take away my day room. That's not going to change me. None of that is going to transform me. You may get some outward change. You may get some outward change, but you're definitely not going to get an inward change that is going to be expressed outwardly for a period of time. I said, why not assign them to a group to address the things that they're going through? If it's anger, it comes from somewhere. If it's violence, it comes from somewhere. Let's instead of everything being takeaway, why not add? Why not add a program and create something like that? And there was silence afterwards, and then try to call for a vote. And then what they did, they tabled it for a future discussion. It was there were nothing but law enforcement that was on there that are running the county jails all over. And to them, that was just like, well, it was an idea that was completely foreign. Like, oh, how would that work? Or we don't have funding for that. Or like, let's just swipe left. That wouldn't. Sure. Let's not do that. And man, I think that's part of the reasons why we got to do this, continue to do this work and these shows is to bring awareness to change the way people think about the incarcerated, informing the incarcerated, and eventually most, I don't know what the percentage is, but it's a high percentage we're going to get out. And you want to keep punishing and punishing and punishing. That don't work. It doesn't work. I've long had the idea, look, if we added life skills, you got to take 4 years of math in high school. A lot of times you do all those 4 years of math and you ain't using that math, or you do 2 years of history and you're not using that history. Why not start in kindergarten with some type of, interpersonal communication, some type of life skills group as mandatory all the way throughout school? It's not legislating morality. It's just some type of skills. And I bet you we'd begin, if it started in kindergarten through 12th grade, that the nation would begin to shift, because there are a lot of things going, and people say, well, the parents ought to be addressing it. Well, sometimes the parents don't have the skills. Anyway, I wanted to add that in. Go ahead, Jay.
Yeah. So I kind of wanted to take a little turn and talk some policy with you, if you don't mind. So there's this proposition that there's within the restorative justice movement, there's kind of a division, a sharp division. Proposition 25. Would you be willing to share a little bit about Prop 25 and your thoughts about it?
Yeah. Right. I'm doing Prop 25 talks all day today.
I saw you on YouTube.
I have another one after this, but it's important. I'm glad to do it because, so Prop 25, for folks who are listening, will essentially replace the cash bail system with a what they call a risk assessment system to determine who gets bail and who doesn't. Most of the arguments that I'm going to tell you the arguments that you're usually going to hear. There's two camps who are no on 25. You have the bail industry because they just want to make money selling bail bonds. So we're not aligned with them.
Sure.
Then you have people on the movement side that are saying, well, one, it's important to point out why, before I say what folks on the movement are saying, it's important now, Prop 25 came about of SB 10, which originally came from the movement. The movement organization who brought SB 10 and was moving it through the legislature a couple of years ago.
Right. There was a collaboration, right, of different restorative justice organizations that said this is what we need to do.
I don't know if I would say restorative justice necessarily, but just criminal justice reform and prison abolitionist organizations that brought SB 10 through. And there was a moment when the author was being pushed by probation and to drastically change to add some things into SB 10 that made it very detrimental. And he decided to make those changes, and that's when the movement stepped away from it. And it's led to. So that's what I wanted to get to, those main points. The number one point, y'all, that makes a Prop 25 a no-go for me ever is that Prop 25 has written into the language that if you are being charged with a serious or violent felony, you have absolutely no opportunity for bail. So what does that mean? That means right now, an officer of the law could walk into my house and say, hey, you just killed somebody. And I'll be like, no, I didn't. I was on with Rich and Jay. What are you talking about? Yeah, you killed somebody. Guess what? I'm now in county jail fighting a murder case for as long as they want me to be, which lessens my ability to win my case because I'm fighting it in blues. Who's going to pay rent on my apartment? Thank goodness I don't have any kids. Like, my whole life can be taken from me by a law enforcement officer with no probable cause, no nothing at any given time. And I have no recourse. Now, right now we have the bail system as recourse, which is not a good one, but it's a recourse. You can raise money. You can't turn a factual no into a yes when it's written into the law.
Right.
And that is why Prop 25 and we all walked away from it. And that's why it'll be a no for me.
Let me ask this. Is it true that if we say keep the bail system in place, that it will be tough to revisit it? Because, for a lot of people who struggle,
that's one of their arguments, right?
Who struggle financially, is sometimes bail is not feasible. It's not a feasible option. What do you say? How do we address that?
Look, bail is trash. I'm not here saying vote no on Prop 25 because cash bail is good. Cash bail is terrible. I'm saying cash bail is better than nothing.
And nothing.
And you have what's also written into Prop 25 is that if you've been convicted of a serious or violent felony, nothing hadn't. So you and me, we're toast. Right. We could be walking down the street, picked up, we're in jail, buddy, period. There's nothing that can happen, right? So,
not even at the judge's discretion.
No, they're specifically written in, there is no discretion.
Wow.
Rich, what go ahead.
The point so I just want to address that part first. This idea that if it's implemented, or if we don't change it, there's nothing we can do, or it'll be very difficult to change. Of course, it'll be very difficult to change. Everything in the law is very difficult to change. But there's nothing written into Prop 25. There's nothing written into a no vote that makes it any harder than it is today. There's nothing. To the contrary, some people, including the governor of California, have been saying, go ahead and vote it in. I know there's issues. We'll change it after the fact.
Right.
Yeah, no, because actually when things are put into California law by ballot measures, legislators are not usually quick to go against the people of California.
Right. Those are the people who elected. Those are the people who elected him in the first place.
Right. That's why we still crap like 3 strikes, because the legislature isn't going to go and you tell me 20 million Californians voted yes on Prop 25 and now the legislature is going to go and change it? Absolutely not. We will be stuck. We will be stuck for years with this policy.
Hey, Rich, what about those who say, last week we had on the show Michael Mendoza, national policy for director for ARC, and he was
ARC? You mean?
Yeah, he's back with ARC. No, he's back with ARC.
Okay, fine.
Okay, so he shared his perspectives and ARC's perspectives, and I know that one of them that I heard is, hey, let's look at like SB 260, right? It started off youthful offender laws. It started off with SB 260, and then we fought for incremental change, SB 261, and then now it's AB 1308, and now those 25 and under started off with those 18 and under, then 21 and under, now 25 and under, and one of their arguments is, hey, let's get this, and then incrementally we can change it. And so I think you answered that right now by saying, you don't see the pushback, but there's this idea also that it'll be 10 years before they can make any changes to it. Is there any truth to that?
There's nothing in the I've read this entire ballot initiative. There's nothing in the statutory changes that say anything like that. The only thing it actually says the exact opposite. And I have a great deal of respect for Michael Mendoza, astounding organizer. But I just disagree. There's nothing in statutory change that says that. And the difference is there's two key differences here. One, we're talking about bills with those youth offender bills you were talking about versus ballot initiatives, which do not work the same way.
Right. It's voters that put in ballot initiatives, and it's legislators that put in bills.
And they're 4 years apart.
Right.
And they cost tens of millions of dollars to make happen. So this idea, like 260, 261, 1308, they were able to happen pretty relatively after another because you can do that for free.
Sure.
Right? So that's one big difference is ballot initiatives don't work the same way that bills do. Secondly, there was nothing written into 260. Actually, I was going to say there was nothing inherently harmful written into 260, but there actually was. And you know what? It's never been solved. because 260, 261, 1308, they all say if you have life without, none Hannon, you're toast.
Right.
They all exclude people with life without.
Right.
And none of the ones that came after solved that problem. They just continued to write that and more into the statute. And now you have people with life without who have same limited capability. They were also 14. They were also 22, whatever.
But because of their sentence, they're stuck.
They're stuck. And no, nobody came back and fixed that with a bill. Actually, they can't come back and fix that with a bill. Why? Because it was put in place with a ballot initiative. And bills can't change ballot initiatives without a 2/3 majority, which is next to impossible to get, especially on something like criminal justice reform. You can get 2/3 when you want to make name a building, but to get 2/3 to give people with life without an opportunity to go home, to get 2/3 to make it so that people charged with violent crimes. Think about how that looks on paper. Somebody charged with murder has an opportunity to get out without paying bail. Now, we all know anybody can be charged with murder at any given time. I was charged with assault with a deadly weapon. I walked into a store and walked out. Not to minimize my responsibility, but it was on tape that I didn't have a deadly weapon, is what I'm saying. And
but you were charged with it. You were charged with it, sure.
And under Prop 25, that charge would have held me in jail with no bail, simply for the charge. And a DA can charge you with whatever they want. So the difference is that comparing ballot initiative and bills is apples and oranges. I think that I've had a lot of conversations with folks at that organization. Their position is incremental change. I'm not against incremental change. I'm saying that doesn't apply. That's not how this particular instrument of policy change works.
Got it.
Rich, thank you for sharing your perspective. Go ahead, Jay.
So yeah, we're getting close to our time with you today. And one thing we didn't get to touch on, which I think is important, is a little bit about question culture.
Yes. What is question culture?
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about that.
So, look, policy can only change when culture has been changed, right? We tried to do, I think y'all remember when we were all Initiate Justice Inside organizers years ago, we wanted to do a bill that capped sentences at 15 years before folks have an opportunity to go home. And some of the most progressive legislators we were talking to said, hey, the public will not support us in that. So we can't do that. So question culture is on the other side. We do culture change work. We make art that challenges oppressive narratives. And we do it in a way that's dope and accessible and feels just like any other movie or a TV show or hip hop song that you'd listen to on the radio. Except for we're trying to make the world more lit and less oppressive. And we connect every one of our major projects with an actual organizing campaign on the ground.
What are some of your projects right now? I've seen some of your stuff on Instagram Live and YouTube, but what are some of your projects right now and how can people go and see those?
Yeah, so I think the most recent thing that we put out was the Defund the Sheriff album, which we were one of the labels who worked on it along with Schools Not Prisons. We did that for Justice LA, which is a coalition of organizations here in LA trying to build a future of a LA without incarceration. And they came to us and they said, look, we're trying to get money out of this huge sheriff's department budget and give it back to the community. And we think that an album will legitimize and amplify that idea. So they called on Question Culture to, and as well as Schools Not Prisons, to executive produce that album. So we got a bunch of dope artists, Vic Mensa, Lauren Yadaguay, Aloe Black, Madam Gandhi, as well as our Question Culture artists, Inigo Mateo, 88. And we put together a compilation album and we were able to, make some waves. We were in Pitchfork, we were in Rolling Stone, we were in Billboard, and we had people talking about defunding the sheriff of Los Angeles at the national scale.
Rich, I haven't seen you on the keyboard or rapping lately. I mean, maybe I'm looking in the wrong places, but when are you going to get back to doing stuff?
There it goes. He's got it right there.
All right.
His desk is a keyboard.
He's always calling him, man. Can you come and do a song, man?
Yeah.
I should have hit him up in advance.
That's what's up.
I've been producing other people's music, y'all. I've been producing Indigo's music. Inigo Mateo is an awesome abolitionist and sexual harm survivor, singer. We're working on her second album right now. We released her first album shortly after I got out. I've been producing a couple of different projects for 88 that I I can't say, but when they come out, y'all gonna know they out.
Yeah.
Really excited about those.
How are things going on the Free 88 campaign?
88's doing great. He got the 1170D. He was recommended for resentencing by the Secretary of Corrections. He had his first court date earlier this month. The judge looks favorable to resentencing, and he has another court date on November 19th where she said she'll give a tentative ruling on if she'll resentence or not. I believe we have to go back one more time to find out by how much.
Awesome. What type of results have they been getting for 1170Ds in Los Angeles?
It's been a mixed bag. I've seen somebody go home 20 years early off 1170D, exceptional conduct. And I've seen people get sent right back and the courts say, we're not even going to look at this. It's very, quite literally case by case.
Yeah. Well, me and Jason got to hear Indigo Mateo sing at the Institute of Impacted Leaders graduation.
Yeah, the graduation for the Institute IJ event.
She showed up and showed out.
Pretty great. Pretty great.
She's good people.
Yeah, she has a beautiful voice and just such an authentic creative. I'm so excited for the second album.
So cool. All right, man. Well, Rich, we appreciate you coming on today. Would you please plug Question Culture, all the things that you're doing on social media? How can people find you? How can they follow you? How can they subscribe? I'm sure you got them memorized top of your head.
Yeah, I mean, if you go to my Instagram, which is at Richie Reseda, just my name, in my link tree is the links to Question Culture, Success Stories, Initiate Justice, the Defund the Sheriff album. Like, it's all right there.
Awesome.
All right. It's good seeing you.
It's great seeing you.
Hey, man, my guy.
And who would have ever known?
I gotta get another shirt though, because that shirt.
You don't like this shirt?
Nah,
it's
right.
Look, hey, look at this.
Light blue
hey,
shirt
bro. Hey, bro. This ain't PIA. This is Perry Ellis.
I mean, it fits a little nicer than PIA, but when I see you in blue shirt, I thought we were in visitors for a second.
My guy.
Hey, man. Sometimes we were in there so long with them colors, they just appeal to you in some way.
Well, we're here on a Thursday. I'm gonna call it Throwback Thursday.
There you go.
Hey, Rich, I love your logo, man. I always wondered what the upside down question mark was, and I see it on your logo right there. And like what you're doing with culture. Ultimately, we will one day collaborate with Crop Organization. Our tagline is working together to restore lives. The Prison Post is sponsored by Crop Organization, and that's one of our ultimate goals: redefining the way people think about prison in America, and to hear your story, our stories. Getting them out there week after week, new stories out there. Those in the restorative justice movement and criminal justice reform movement, and formerly incarcerated people, and saying like, "Wow, here's another one. Oh, here's another one. Oh, here's another one." And because I think that sometimes they think that people like us are an anomaly, and it ain't true.
Yep. I remember I'll leave y'all with this. In the last prison I was, after I left y'all and I was in Jamestown. I was in the firehouse. I was fighting fire, and I would have to go in and out of the actual prison all the time and get stripped out. And there was just one cop who would do it, and we built a little bit of a relationship. And he said, "Hey, man, how come all them guys in there," pointing towards the yard away from the firehouse where I came from, "how come all those guys in there aren't like you?" I said, "They are, sir. They absolutely are. And they just need the opportunity to be that. I got this opportunity to be in this firehouse. What opportunity do they need for you to trust them?"
That part.
See a man as it could be, and he will be. Hey, love you, bro.
Love y'all.
Thanks, Rich. Thanks, Rich.
Talk y'all soon.
Good to see you.
All right,
brother. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to The Prison Post, a production of the Crop Organization. We'll be sharing more stories from the world of prison reform and restorative justice, so please join us. You can listen to The Prison Post on all major podcasting platforms. Subscribe to our video cast on YouTube and like us on Facebook at The Prison Post and at Creating Restorative Opportunities and Programs.